First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Okay, so as Jessica indicated, what I'll be talking about today is a local e-content management platform, which we refer to as INDYREADS. This platform is currently being rolled out to the New South Wales Public Library network. The platform obviously can host e-books, but it can also host audio and video content. What distinguishes INDYREADS from other platforms in use by public libraries across Australia is the collection that we've developed, the platform's enhanced functionality, which allows libraries to upload content and apply DRM where appropriate, and the bespoke license agreement that we've developed for this particular project. The platform was piloted in 2017 at Leichhardt and Parramatta Libraries in Sydney. And at the time, we were interested to see if it was possible for the State Library to provide the public library network with the technical infrastructure and legal framework which would allow libraries to be local aggregators of content. Now, as you will hear, the project was partly a reaction to the turbulent e-lending licensing environment of the previous decade, but that continues to roll on to the present day. It was also an exploration of new publishing streams. It became apparent that beyond the big five publishers, there was also an exciting independent publishing scene. The self-publishing sector was also flourishing, challenging stereotypes associated with this particular publishing pathway. Based on the success of the pilot, we decided to proceed with the state rollout of the INDYREADS platform. The platform contains an opening collection of Australian independent published works, but also independent published works from overseas, the best examples of self-published content, as well as offering content in languages other than English. We've actually put together a sizable fund to purchase material in languages other than English, and this year we'll be engaging with the language specialists within the New South Wales Public Library network to start that process of selecting content for the platform. So that's an exciting initiative. Libraries will also be encouraged to upload digitised material from their local studies collections, such as journals, manuscripts and oral histories. The genesis of INDYREADS ties in with a narrative from Rebecca about the wider copyright environment in which libraries operate both domestically and internationally. The emergence of ebooks and the manner in which they are licensed by publishers for use in libraries has created many issues for the library profession around collection development, management and community access to cultural works. These issues started impacting libraries back in 2010 when the popularity of ebooks in the general public skyrocketed. At the time, the big five publishers were grappling with the concept of e-lending in public libraries. Some declined not to make content available, whilst others explored a variety of access models, ranging from perpetual access, one copy, one loan, through to the exploding licenses that Rebecca referred to. One US library service had a really interesting response to the dilemma of ebook availability. The manager of Douglas County Libraries, Jamie LaRue, frustrated by the stance of the big five publishers, decided to look for alternative sources of content. And he discovered that there'd actually been a seismic shift in the publishing landscape. Advances in technology had democratised the means of publishing and distribution. Independent publishers and self-publishing were thriving, and unlike the big five, the independent publishers and self-publishing sectors were happy to sell content to Douglas County Libraries using their bespoke agreement. The Douglas County Library Initiative was a dynamic response to the issue of large publishers' reluctance to sell content, make it available for e-lending in libraries. The DCL model allowed libraries to become local aggregators of digital content and to introduce to their community a greater diversity of work, some of which was sourced from local publishers and authors. The US project inspired the State Library of New South Wales, along with a number of other libraries in Northern America, to explore the concept of library as an aggregator and the opportunities to introduce new streams of content from non-traditional sources to library members. To determine what content licensing opportunities existed for Australian public libraries, we need to take a closer look at the publishing landscape. What we know is that the publishing industry has obviously undertaken been radically changed by technology over the past 2 decades. Traditional legacy publishers are no longer the gatekeepers for publishing and distribution. Nowadays, a small independent publisher or a self-published author can easily publish and distribute works globally in both print and digital formats. Unfortunately, the publishing sector or industry sales data from sources such as PubStat and Nielsen BookScan do not capture the digital sales for self-published titles via the numerous online platforms and miss many of the smaller publishers. And as such, we are in the dark with regards to the exact figure for ebook sales. The data that we do have suggests that ebooks have been tracking at around 20% of the total book sales for a number of years. However, this reflects legacy publishing sector data. It has been speculated by a data analyst that the majority of annual ebook sales in the US are actually not recorded. Whilst the exact figures of unrecorded ebook sales is contentious, it is likely that non-legacy publisher annual sales eclipse the digital sales of traditional publishers. We know that 32% of titles on Amazon's bestseller list are actually self-published. It's also interesting to look at online reading platforms such as Wattpad, which offer a combination of free and paywall access to content. Wattpad has a staggering 80 million users internationally, and those users spend 22 billion minutes per month reading the content on that platform. I think it would be fascinating to know if the Wattpad community actually also engages with public libraries. Are they finding the content of interest to them in our collections? Domestically, there's also some interesting trends occurring. Research undertaken by Macquarie University and Melbourne University indicates that Australian genre fiction is shifting from traditional publishers to independent publishers and self-publishing. Academic Emmett Stinson noted that the publishing of Australian literary fiction and poetry has moved from large traditional publishers to small independent Australian publishers. The fact that the small press books dominated the shortlist of the most recent Man Booker Prize would also suggest that this is a similar trend occurring overseas. The dilemma for public libraries is it appears that the combined factors of ebook aggregator platforms, metered access licensing and the higher cost of ebooks when compared to the equivalent title in print has had an overall negative impact on the diversity of content in digital collections of public libraries. Due to the associated cost of delivering and maintaining a predominantly metered access collection, public libraries can only generate a reasonable return on investment from a monetary perspective by selecting the best sellers. And this conclusion was alluded to by Rebecca. The cultural cost for our communities is that public library collections will reflect a narrower range of content than what is available in the print collections. Popular bestsellers will be purchased to the detriment of emerging authors and independent published titles, whilst best-selling content from the self-publishing ecosystem will also be missed due to issues around availability, but also the awareness of this content and the value of the content by the library profession. I think it's fair to say that if libraries do not explore the opportunities available to provide our communities with the best examples of independent and self-published content, we risk diluting our relevance to an unknown segment of our communities which have embraced this content. One of the challenges that we face going forward with this project is to dispel the perception amongst the library profession that self-published content is vanity press and represents universally poor quality content. There are numerous examples of self-published content being picked up by traditional publishers due to the established success of the author. There are also many authors which are happy to stay within the self-publishing ecosystem due to the success that they're having. These authors may not be known to bookshops or libraries, that they have sales which far exceed those of many authors which are actually household names. Beyond fiction work, there are also those who would like to document their community's history or their family history. They have interesting stories to tell. Kirsten alluded to Brad Steadman, an Indigenous elder from Brewarrina. I think Kirsten actually mentioned our project while she was out in that community, and Brad actually reached out to me some time ago, and he's interested in writing a work about or documenting the history of his local rugby club. So there's a really interesting opportunity for public libraries to help support community writers to publish their work and to distribute their work. Another benefit of licensing content from independent publishers and self-published authors relates to the issue of diversity. A study in the US demonstrated that traditional publishers have a dismal record for publishing titles that could be considered diverse in content. Over a 20-year period, the study concluded that the percentage of diverse content had not moved from 10%, even though there had been a radical shift in the demographics across the United States over that period. Whereas the anecdotal evidence suggests that small press and independent press and self-published authors have an output that is far more representative of the experiences of the wider community. As our communities change, public libraries need to ensure that we provide collections which mirror the diversity of experiences of our patrons. Otherwise, we risk alienating that segment of our community. INDYREADS can help address this issue through the proactive licensing by the State Library. Public libraries using our bespoke agreement will also be able to license and upload content directly from community publishers. Several New South Wales public libraries situated in the ethnically diverse western suburbs of Sydney have already formed partnerships with literary movements such as Sweatshop and Westwards, which aim to empower marginalised communities take control of how they are being portrayed and perceived, and to build alternatives through artistic endeavours such as writing. Having identified the opportunity to bring new content streams to the New South Wales public libraries, the next consideration was around the manner in which we could purchase the content. Initially, we had hoped to use a similar approach to Douglas County Libraries. They had developed a simple 2-page statement of common understanding which articulated the terms of acquisition in plain English. After seeking domestic legal advice, I was advised that a simple contract would be a better approach to it in Australia due to the differences between Australian and US copyright law. So several months later, the 2-page statement of common understanding became the 10-page contract called New South Wales Public Library Agreement for Purchasing Electronic Content. The State Library has successfully used this agreement to purchase content from Australian publishers. The agreement, as indicated, will be made available to the New South Wales Public Library Network. The licence agreement is based on the principles of perpetual access and preservation, includes the right to move the content to an alternative platform if we so decide at a later date, a default one copy, one loan lending model, but with the flexibility to negotiate alternative forms of concurrent access, the right to modify files for accessibility purposes, and it also contains the flexibility to accommodate consortia and standalone acquisitions. During the pilot phase, we reached out to a small sample of independent Australian publishers to gauge their interest in selling content directly to the State Library. We discovered a great deal of enthusiasm for the initiative. A number of these publishers had never sold digital content to public libraries before. Using the agreement, we negotiated for the acquisition of over 1,000 titles. At present, we're working with around 20 Australian publishers, and as the project continues, we will reach out and license content from new publishers. Beyond the pilot, we identified an opportunity to create a statewide collection of titles which complemented existing public library collections by focusing on mid-list and small independent Australian and international publishers. We also wanted to ensure that the New South Wales community had ongoing access to important works in digital formats such as international classics and modern literary titles, plus award winners from across a diverse range of genre categories. We were fortunate at the time to be in a position where we could purchase a large collection of new edition classics from one of the big 5 publishers before they transitioned from a perpetual access license model to a metered access license. The titles, which cost around $20 on average for a perpetual access license, jumped overnight to $60 for a 2-year metered access license. With regards to self-published content, the challenge facing libraries is how do we identify the best examples? To solve this issue, the State Library of New South Wales used the bestseller list supplied by one of the main self-publishing aggregators, Smashwords. The titles were then manually benchmarked against Goodreads, which is an online social reading platform, with selections based on a combination of the number of written reviews and star ratings. We hope to eventually automate this process via an API. Okay, we've also been in conversation with our colleagues in the United States, where public library engagement with self-published authors has been underway for a number of years with initiatives such as Self-E, Indy's Author Day, and the soon-to-be famous Illinois Author Project. There are many examples of library-sponsored writing competitions in the US and networking days which bring together community authors and editors and local publishers. They also run writing workshops for aspiring authors within their community. They even have a National Library Award for the Best Emerging Writer in particular genre categories. One short-term aim is to buy a collection of content which is being curated by the Library Journal, and they're behind the Indie Authors Day project. The collection contains 400 self-published titles which are available under an unlimited simultaneous access license. I've been informed that one library service in the US, which has this collection, has recorded 30,000 loans for a 1-month period. So there's certainly an appetite for self-published content. To conclude, we are midway through phase 1 of the project. So we have approximately 50% of public libraries where we've configured the library management system with the INDYREADS platform, and that then facilitates the ability for a library patron to download the content onto their platform, onto their device. Phase 2 will be focused on local studies material, and those libraries which are interested in uploading their digitised collections or part of their collections onto the platform. So we'll be providing the necessary training to facilitate that. And phase 3, which is probably 14 or 15 months away, we'll be looking at library engagement with their community in regards to assisting aspiring authors and also licensing content from local publishers and authors. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much,